My name is Marin Kinsley. When I was 25, I vanished without a trace. No goodbye, no funeral, just gone. Everyone said I cracked, that I had a breakdown, ran off, changed my name, and started over. Some said I joined a cult. Some said I drowned myself. Truth is, I was buried, not under dirt, under him. Now I'm 34, and they just found his body washed up on the beach. Face down, throat crushed, a symbol carved into his chest that only 3 women in this world understand. I'm one of them. And no, I'm not crying. I'm watching from the bluff with a warm coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other, wearing a cardigan he used to say made me look exhausted. I wear it every chance I get now. Because the truth is, I am exhausted. But not from grief, from waiting. The morning they found him was gray and wet. A fog hung low over the cliffs, and the ocean looked like steel. It was low tide when his body came in. Locals said he looked like he was sleeping, that he must have fallen, that he was a troubled man. They didn't see the barbed wire cutting into his wrists, or the half smile still frozen on his face like he finally understood the punchline. They didn't see the symbol, a crescent torn by 3 diagonal lines. It was deep, not decorative, like whoever carved it wanted it to be remembered, or recognized. But that's the thing, only we would recognize it. Me. His second wife, Elena, and her, the new girl in town, the one with the dark eyes and silence that says more than words ever could. We didn't just know the symbol, we designed it. The news called him Lucas Mercer, a respected entrepreneur and local real estate mogul. In the obits, they said he was complex, driven, and deeply missed. That wasn't his real name. Not to me. To me, he was James. To Elena, he was Caleb. To the new girl, I'm not even sure what name he gave her. Because that's what he did. He reinvented himself for every woman, every town, every lie. Like a snake shedding skin, same venom underneath. I met him when I was 23. He walked into the bookstore I worked at, wearing a peacoat and a smile that knew it would win. He asked me where the poetry section was. Said he just moved here. Said he loved the way I talked. Said I was different. Funny thing is, he never read a single poem. Not once. We married fast. He made it feel like destiny. No big ceremony, just the 2 of us and a courthouse clerk who didn't care what came next. He said weddings were a scam. I believed him. At first, he was magnetic. You know, the kind of man who can make you feel like a planet. Orbiting around him felt like gravity. But that's how they all start. Then came the rules. Little ones at first. No makeup, you don't need it. No friends from work, they're jealous. No late night calls, it's disrespectful. No pants, you look better in dresses. Then the silence, the disappearances, the gaslighting. The way he'd punish me without ever raising a hand. He didn't have to. He could make you doubt your own breath. He could make you say sorry for bleeding. He told people I was unstable. He told my family I needed space. Then he told them I was gone. And I was. But not in the way he meant. I became a ghost, quietly watching my own obituary play out in real time. And the world? It moved on, because women like me go missing every day, and nobody really asks why. 2 years later, he remarried. Her name was Elena. She was the kind of woman men write songs about, soft, warm, believing. She posted cupcake recipes online, volunteered, wore pearls. He made her his trophy, and she thought she had won. The first time I saw her, I was in town visiting my sister in secret. Elena was buying oranges at the market. She looked happy. She also flinched when a man shouted behind her. That flinch told me everything. I didn't speak to her. Not yet. I watched her, quietly, patiently, like I was studying a painting I once posed for. I didn't hate her. I pitied her, because I knew exactly how her story would end, unless someone rewrote it. The third woman came years later. She arrived like fog, soft, still, and everywhere. Nobody knew where she came from. She rented a small cottage by the woods and took odd jobs. Didn't talk much, didn't smile. But when she walked past me one day at the pier, she whispered one thing. He told me I wasn't real. And that's when I knew she was one of us. The three of us didn't become friends. We became a unit. No meetings, no texts, just handwritten notes, burned after reading. Secret glances, shared silence, pain that echoed but never needed repeating. We didn't bond over survival. We bonded over what had to be done. We planned it for 6 months, every detail, every step, every lie he'd try to tell, we already knew it. We waited until the day he made the same mistake he always made, thinking he still had control. I won't describe everything we did to him. Not here. Not yet. But I'll tell you this. When it was over, he knew. He knew who we were. He remembered our names. And for the first time in his life, he begged. Not for forgiveness, for mercy. And we gave it to him, but not in the way he wanted. We gave him the sea. Now the town mourns him. The paper says it's a tragedy. The sheriff calls it an open case, but quietly says, sometimes a man just breaks. Let them say that. Let them keep guessing. The truth is, he didn't fall. He didn't slip. He didn't drown by accident. He was dismantled. By women who once loved him. By women he couldn't kill with silence. By women who chose to bury the past, but not ourselves. We weren't victims, we were architects. And he was the blueprint we burned. The second wife. The first time I saw Elena up close, she was wearing a yellow dress and standing at the edge of a garden, clipping roses. Her hands were shaking. It was subtle, a tremor so small it could be mistaken for the breeze. But I saw it. I always see it in women like her, that tiny flicker of fear that hides behind the eyes, that quiet, practiced calm. She hadn't learned to cover it yet. She was still trying to be perfect, still trying to be lovable enough to avoid his storms. I knew that stage. I'd lived there too long. She smiled at me that day, polite and soft. I smiled back like I didn't know what he did to women once they stopped being new. Elena was his second act, his upgrade. I was the wild one, the emotionally unstable first wife who couldn't be managed. Elena was curated, delicate, obedient, pretty in the way that looked good at charity galas and dinner parties. He wore her like a medal, and she wore him like a collar. She didn't see it at first. Of course not. Abusers don't punch you in the face on day one. They buy you flowers. They learn your favorite tea. They listen. Then one day, they start changing the music. They start calling you too sensitive, too loud, too clingy. And if you're like Elena, sweet, soft, raised to make peace, you believe it's your fault. You start apologizing for bleeding. We spoke for the first time during an accidental run-in at the pharmacy. I followed her there. I'd been doing that for weeks, watching, studying, not because I was curious, because I needed to know if she was ready. "Excuse me," I said, brushing past her in the cold aisle, pretending to look at cough syrups. She turned, smiled politely, said nothing. Then I dropped my phone. She picked it up and handed it back. That's when I saw it, just for a second, a small dark bruise on her inner wrist, half hidden by her sleeve. "Thanks," I said. "No problem," she replied. Then I looked her dead in the eyes and said it. "He used to say I broke things just to watch them fall apart." She froze. I smiled. Then I walked away. 3 days later, I found a note tucked into my mailbox. No name. Just 3 words written in rushed handwriting. "Tell me more." We met at the edge of the woods the next night. She wore a hoodie and no makeup, no wedding ring. I didn't speak. I waited. And then she broke. "He tells me I sleep too loud," she said, "that I talk too much, that I dress like I'm begging for attention, and sometimes I forget who I was before him." I nodded. She kept going. "He told me once that I was lucky, that no one else would ever love me the way he does, and I think I believed him." Silence. Just wind and leaves. Then she said it. "I want him gone." We don't talk much about justice, not in the way people think. We don't talk about courts or therapy or healing. We talk about endings. Final ones. Permanent ones. The kind you can't walk back from. Because men like him don't leave bruises that show up on x-rays. They leave ghosts in your brain. They make you afraid of your own voice. They train you to flinch at your reflection. And sometimes the only way to kill that kind of infection is to burn the body it came from. Elena wanted to help, but she was still too soft, too kind, too scared of being bad. So we brought her in slowly, gave her time, let her see that we weren't monsters. We were surgeons, and he was the tumor. We started with surveillance, nothing illegal, not yet. The quiet girl, she handled that. She had a way of moving through the world like she was invisible. People never looked twice, never remembered her face. She got his schedules, passwords, travel plans. She even got into his burner phone. Elena, on the other hand, gave us the real prize, his habits. He was a creature of routine. Monday dinners at the club. Friday meetings that always ended at the same hotel with different names in the registry. He liked blondes. He liked power games. He liked them quiet. Elena told us everything, and we listened. One night, I asked her what finally changed her mind, what made her stop trying to fix him and start plotting to end him. She didn't answer at first, just looked out the window, lit a cigarette with hands that no longer shook. Then she said, "He said if I left, he'd ruin me. And for the first time, I believed he would." She took a long drag, exhaled slow, "But if I ruin him first, there's nothing left for him to use." The last thing he ever did to her was smile. He smiled when he said she was just like me, that she'd break too, that women like us always do. She nodded and smiled back. What he didn't know was that Elena had already emptied his bank account into an offshore wallet, had already copied his hard drives, had already sent all the evidence of his affairs, his threats, his fake business records, everything, to every major news outlet under anonymous burner emails. By the time they found his body, his entire empire was collapsing. One more thing he couldn't control. We weren't just killing a man. We were erasing a legend. Every article about him now has an asterisk. Every interview, every headshot, every fake smile on every boardroom wall, tainted. He doesn't get to be mourned. He gets to be studied, like a virus. Elena doesn't wear pearls anymore. She wears leather now. Drives a black car with tinted windows, changed her number, moved out of the lake house. She still cries sometimes, but only when she's alone, and never for him. She once told me, "I thought revenge would make me feel strong, but all it did was make me quiet." I said, "That is strong." Then we sat in silence for a long time. The cops still haven't made an arrest. They won't. There's no trail. No weapon. No motive they can prove. Just 3 women who smile a little too easily when his name comes up. 3 women who don't need to explain themselves. 3 women who outlived him. We weren't jealous exes. We weren't broken girls. We weren't asking for it. We were just women. Women who got tired of dying quietly. And the best part, he thought he was untouchable. But even kings drown when they forget they're standing in the tide. The quiet girl, her name, at least the one she gave us, was Nora. I don't know if it's real. I never asked. She never offered. And honestly, it didn't matter. Because everything else about her was real. The scars, the silence, the way she looked at the world like she'd already burned it down once and was thinking about doing it again. Nora didn't walk like the rest of us. She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize with her body the way women are taught to. She took up space, not loudly, but like she dared you to question why she was there. She didn't smile often, but when she did, it was like a warning. A slow, careful curling of the lip that told you, "I know more than you think, and I've seen worse than you ever will." I met her on a Thursday, late spring, gray skies, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones without asking. She sat at the pier with a book she wasn't reading and a coffee she wasn't drinking. I sat down beside her without a word. We didn't speak for almost 10 minutes. Then out of nowhere, she said, "He told me I was imaginary." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. I just nodded and replied, "He used to tell me I was lucky he didn't leave me at a gas station." She snorted. It wasn't quite a laugh, but close. And that was the beginning. Nora had her own story, of course. She always does. We all do. But hers was darker, less romantic, no rings, no wedding photos, just months of disappearing that over and over again, until there was no version of her left that hadn't been erased at least once. She met him when she was 19. He was 10 years older, already successful, already charming, already dangerous in that quiet, magnetic way predators always are. He picked her because she was vulnerable, living alone, between jobs, no real family, no safety net, and then he made her his project. She said he never raised his voice, just his expectations. Never hit her. Just isolated her, gave her rules instead of bruises, guilt instead of chains. He made me want to disappear, she told me once, and then convinced me it was my idea. By the time she left, she had nothing. No ID, no money, no past, just a duffel bag and a cigarette burned on her thigh she gave herself to stay awake. She moved to our town because he told her once he hated it, said it was cold and ugly. So she made it her refuge. That's the thing about survivors. We don't run toward safety. We run toward anything that's not him. Nora was the one who cracked the whole thing open. She's the reason we had leverage, evidence, access. Because Nora was smart, not just book smart, dangerously observant. She remembered everything. Times, passwords, phone numbers. She could tell what mood he was in just by the way he shut the car door. She knew how to blend in, knew how to vanish in public, and she knew how to watch without ever being seen. She followed him for 2 months, dressed like a jogger, a waitress, a nanny. She learned his habits, what he ordered, what time he slept, who he slept with, how often, what names he used, what lies he told. She had it all. She even found his storage unit. That's where we found the tapes. No, not that kind of tape. These were voice memos, notes to himself, long rambling rants about his failures, about us, about the next one. He recorded everything, like he thought the universe owed him an audience. We found one dated 7 years ago. That was the year I disappeared. In it, he said, Marin was never real. She was something I made. When she stopped being useful, I deleted her. He said it like he was describing an app, not a person, not a woman he married, not a life he hollowed out and left behind. That's when we knew. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice. We copied everything. Every file, every memo, every screenshot Nora had taken. We created backups in encrypted folders, sent them to each other, to burner accounts, to an old lawyer Nora somehow trusted. We weren't just going to destroy him. We were going to document it. Because stories like ours disappear every day. No headline, no closure, just whispers. But we were going to make sure this one echoed. Nora didn't want to be the face of anything. She didn't want a voice. She wanted the end. Not a conversation, not an apology, just silence. The kind you get after a house burns down and all that's left is ash. The last night before we did it, before we put the plan into motion, Nora sat at my kitchen table, drinking something strong, staring out at the moonlight on the water. She said, I used to think the worst thing he did was lie, but it wasn't. It was making me lie to myself, every day, just to keep breathing. Then she asked, You think we're going to go to hell for this? I said, We already lived there. She didn't respond, just nodded once and smiled. When we pulled it off, it was almost too clean. People think murder is chaos. It's not when you've been planning it for years. It's patience, it's restraint, it's timing down to the breath. And Nora? She was the one who set it all in motion. We didn't stab him. We didn't shoot him. We didn't poison his drink. We cornered him, in truth, in exposure, in the weight of everything he'd done, now impossible to bury. He didn't jump. He didn't drown. He was crushed by what he built, and we just let gravity do the rest. Nora disappeared again afterward, not because she was afraid, because she was done. She left a note, one sentence, Thank you for making me real again. We haven't seen her since. But sometimes I like to think she's still out there, wearing someone else's name, living a quiet life, never looking over her shoulder. She told me once, Women like us don't get happy endings. Maybe, but we got an ending. And that's more than most of us ever get. How to bury a god. There's no manual for killing a man like Lucas Mercer. He's not the kind you can just shoot in an alley and walk away from. Not the type who's ever alone or vulnerable or out of control long enough for something as crude as violence. No, men like him don't die that easily. They have to be erased, rewritten from the inside out. Their image, their empire, their narrative, that's what dies first. If you want to kill a god, you have to make the world stop believing in him. We spent 6 weeks crafting the end. Not the murder, the collapse, the unmaking. Nora handled the digital assault. She dumped encrypted files into every major outlet's inbox. Bank fraud, real estate scams, tax evasion, secret audio of threats. Elena took the legal angle. She leaked his confidential emails to a few activist lawyers. Whistleblower leaks, signed anonymously. Suddenly, state agencies were knocking on his door with quiet urgency. Me? I handled the rumors. I reappeared, but not as myself. I created a new identity, posted anonymously in survivor forums, Reddit threads, TikTok confessions, used a voice changer, a fake face, AI-enhanced storytelling. Just got out of a relationship with a man who changed names every time he moved towns, gaslit me into thinking I wasn't real, vanished his first wife, married again, then again. The internet took care of the rest. By week 4, people were watching him. He didn't know why. He started making calls. Paranoid ones. We know because we had them tapped. I know it's them, he hissed into one call. I know it's Marin. I don't care what they said. She's not dead. She's behind this. No one believed him. That was the best part. The man who convinced the world we were crazy was now being told he was paranoid, unstable, overreacting. His greatest weapon, doubt, was now being used against him. He was unraveling. We didn't touch him. Not once. We just turned up the heat. Lit match after match around the edges of his life until the whole thing caught fire. He couldn't sleep. He drank too much. He started slipping, snapping at staff, forgetting meetings, losing clients, losing face. He started calling Elena again, apologizing, crying, begging. She recorded every call. One day he left her a voicemail. You win. Okay, you fucking win. Just tell me what you want. She never responded. Instead, she sent the audio to his mother and to the board of his company. Then she blocked his number. He tried to fight back, tried to leak his own version of events, tried to find me, hired a private investigator, but the PI found something unexpected, a death certificate. Mine. Nora forged it 6 years ago, filed it in a rural county under a false name, attached it to a mental health report claiming I'd been institutionalized, then cremated with no remains. Paid off a clerk who didn't ask questions. There was no one to find. I didn't exist. By the time the police came calling, it wasn't about murder. It was about fraud, money laundering, stolen identities, shell companies. He started to panic, sold his house, liquidated assets, and then came the letter. We didn't sign it, didn't need to. It arrived at his office in a black envelope, no return address. Inside was a single photo, the 3 of us, me, Elena, Nora, smiling, alive, unafraid. On the back, just 4 words, you won't be missed. He fled town that night, but he didn't make it far. The official story is vague. He was found washed up on the northern shoreline, just past the dunes. The coroner ruled it accidental drowning, but there were details that didn't make sense. Wire marks on the wrists, the symbol on his chest, the crescent with 3 slashes, salt stuffed into his mouth, sand under his nails like he clawed at something or someone. The report tried to ignore those. But we know, we remember every second. The night we confronted him, it wasn't some cinematic showdown, no thunder, no guns, no grand speeches. We met him at the cliffs just after midnight. He was already drunk, sweating, paranoid. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You're supposed to be dead," he said. "I was," I replied. He laughed, a broken sound. "You can't prove anything," he snarled. "You think anyone's gonna believe 3 crazy butches over me?" He always had a way with words. Nora said nothing, just stepped forward and dropped a box at his feet. Inside, flash drives, tapes, photos, paperwork, proof, his entire life reduced to evidence. That's when Elena spoke. Calm, quiet, sharp. "We're not here to prove anything, Lucas. We're here to end it." He looked down at the box, back at us, and then he did something unexpected. He dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry," he whispered. It was the first time he ever said it, and he meant it. But that's the thing about men like him. They only apologize when they know there's no way out. We didn't kill him. We left him there, alone, shaking. Let him choose his ending. Maybe he threw himself into the ocean, maybe he drank too much and slipped, or maybe he realized that living with no power left was worse than dying. Whatever it was, he disappeared that night, and we never looked back. Elena moved away a month later, started fresh, changed her name, bought a small cabin in the mountains. I hear she writes now. Nora? Gone, as always. She was never meant to stay. As for me, I stayed here, because someone needs to remember. They tell stories about him now. Whispers. Rumors. Some say he was murdered. Some say he faked his death and fled the country. But no one talks about the symbol. No one asks why it was carved so deep. Because the truth is, that symbol wasn't for the police. It wasn't for the press. It wasn't even for him. It was for us. Our mark. Our closure. Our proof that we didn't just survive. We won. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been told that you're crazy, that your pain is imaginary, that your voice doesn't matter, remember this. Sometimes justice doesn't come in courtrooms. Sometimes it comes with patience, with planning, with fire. Sometimes it comes from the women no one believed. We weren't the wives he loved. We were the ones he buried. And we came back. Before the fire, there's a moment, right before everything burns, where time goes still. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's not cinematic like they show you in movies. It's quiet. Too quiet. Like the world is holding its breath, waiting to see if you'll really do it. That moment came for me the night before we took him down. I was alone in my old apartment, the one I hadn't set foot in for years, the place where I'd last been his. The space where I learned how small I could make myself just to survive. The key still worked. Of course it did. He never thought I'd come back. Everything was still the same. Same dusty couch, same chipped kitchen tiles. Even the crooked photo frame he used to insist was perfectly fine was still hanging in its smug, off-center way. I don't know why I went there. Maybe to remind myself who I used to be. Maybe to say goodbye to her. The version of me who once thought love meant endurance. Who confused cruelty with passion. Who whispered sorry before she ever said no. I sat in the dark for hours. No lights, just the hum of the refrigerator and the low creaks of a place that never felt like home. Then I lit the first match. I didn't burn it, if that's what you're wondering. I'm not that poetic. But I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Instead, I let the match burn down to my fingertips before I dropped it into the sink. I watched the tiny flame fight and die, just like I had. Then I left the place, left the ghost of who I was, didn't even lock the door behind me. The next day, everything moved fast. We had one shot, one window, no do-overs. Nora was already in position. She'd rented a van under a fake name. Inside were all the files, the evidence, labeled, stacked, cross-referenced, ready to go. Elena was on the legal side. She had scheduled leaks set to drop if anything happened to any of us. Time-released emails, automatic posts, dead man switches. Me, I was the bait. I sent him the message myself. Simple, direct. We need to talk. Alone, tonight, come to the cliffs. No threats, no anger. And of course, he came. I wore the cardigan he hated, the one he said made me look tired. I wanted him to see it when I walked toward him in the moonlight. Wanted that to be the last thing he ever saw me in. Not lingerie, not fear, power. He was already half drunk when I arrived, pacing, talking to himself. He looked smaller than I remembered, like his bones had shrunk from guilt. When he saw me, he froze. Then, Marin, I didn't let him finish. Save it. That voice, I hadn't used it in years. He flinched. I almost smiled. Then Nora appeared from the trees. Then Elena, quiet as breath from the other side of the rocks. He looked from one of us to the other. stumbled back a step. "No," he whispered. "No, this isn't real." I stepped closer. "You always said I was imaginary," I said, "but I'm standing right here." We didn't yell, didn't strike him, didn't scream or beg. We just surrounded him with the truth. Nora laid out the flash drives. Elena dropped the contracts, the bank transfers, the emails. I gave him the tapes, the recordings of him berating, threatening, humiliating, evidence from 3 lives he thought were buried. We didn't need to argue. We let the facts speak for themselves, and they were deafening. "I never meant to hurt anyone," he mumbled at one point. It was the last lie he ever told, because the truth is, he didn't just mean to. He enjoyed it. He savored the control, the fear, the way he could shape a woman like wet clay and call it love. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Money? Silence? Just name it." Elena laughed. It was low and bitter. "We don't want money," she said. "We want you to know." Nora stepped forward. "We want you to feel for once in your life what it's like to be trapped." He backed away, right toward the cliff edge. I didn't touch him. I just looked him in the eye and said, "There's no one left to lie to." And then we turned our backs on him. We walked away, left him standing there with his empire in flames and no audience left to clap for him. When his body was found the next morning, no one knew exactly what happened. The tide washed away everything. The footprints, the tears, the moment the mask slipped. But we know, we don't talk about it, not even to each other. We don't need to. The days after were strange, quiet, surreal, like waking up from a nightmare you forgot was real. I kept waiting for the fear to return, for the knock at the door, the angry phone call, the next manipulation, but it never came, because he was gone. And we were still here. Elena left town 2 weeks later. She hugged me once at the train station and whispered, "I'll never forgive myself for loving him." I told her, "That's what makes you human, loving and surviving it." Nora didn't say goodbye, just vanished like smoke. She was never built for staying. Some women are like wind, always moving, always impossible to hold, but they carry storms with them, and when they leave, they take the silence too. Me, I stayed. I bought a small cottage by the edge of the bluff. Every morning, I walk to the cliff, drink coffee, listen to the waves. I think about the girl I used to be, and I let her rest. They still don't know who did it. The police don't have suspects. The press moved on. The internet forgot. But sometimes I catch someone whispering the story at the market, the perfect husband who vanished, the mysterious symbol on his chest. And I smile, because they'll never know. Only we do. And that's exactly how it should be. Some stories aren't meant to be told. Some are meant to be buried, like the wives we once were. The shadow's edge. Sometimes the hardest part of revenge isn't the plan. It's what comes after. The quiet, the emptiness, the echo of footsteps where screams used to be. Because when you finally pull the trigger, metaphorically or not, you realize you're not the same person who started it. After Lucas was gone, the town changed. People whispered. Rumors grew. The man who once held the streets like a king vanished like smoke. But the scars he left, those stayed. Elena moved far away. Nora disappeared without a trace. And me? I stayed on the edge of that cliff, staring at the endless water and wondering what I had lost. It wasn't just him I buried. I buried years of fear, years of silence, years of pretending that surviving meant living. I was free, but I felt empty. I walked through the days like a ghost, watching others live, laugh, love, while I kept my pain folded tight inside. One night, a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, a stranger stood there. No smile, no warmth, just eyes that didn't blink. He said his name was Harper, said he knew what happened to Lucas, said he knew what we did, and that he wanted something in return. I laughed, because I thought the past was dead, because I thought no one could touch me anymore. But Harper wasn't joking. He had proof, more than we had. Files Lucas never wanted anyone to see. Photos, emails, contacts. He said he was a collector of secrets, and that Lucas had been hiding one last thing. I wanted to tell him to leave, to burn the files, to disappear. But I didn't, because maybe deep down I was still waiting for the reckoning. Harper's deal was simple. He'd keep quiet if I did something for him, something dangerous, something that meant stepping back into the shadows I thought I left behind. I hesitated, but revenge teaches you a lot about fear. Mostly that it's just another chain. And sometimes breaking one chain means grabbing another. I agreed. That was how I found myself weeks later in a hotel room on the other side of the country, meeting with strangers who didn't care about justice, who cared only about power. Harper was waiting. He handed me a folder with photos of people I didn't know, men and women who had built empires on lies, who preyed on the vulnerable. And he said, "You want to stop them? We'll make them fall." It wasn't about Lucas anymore. It was bigger, much bigger. I realized then that Lucas was only the beginning, a shadow on the edge of a much darker world, one I couldn't ignore. And so I chose to fight, not for revenge, but for something harder, for truth. Sometimes winning means stepping into the darkness you fear, because that's where the real monsters live. I'm not sure what comes next, but I know this. I'm no longer a victim. I'm no longer invisible. I'm someone who buried a god, and I'm ready to bury more. Rising from ashes. My name is Marin Kinsley. By now, you've heard pieces of my story, broken whispers, rumors, lies spun to protect men like Lucas Mercer. But this is the truth, raw and unfiltered. I survived. I burned him down, and I rebuilt myself from the ashes. After everything, the plan, the escape, the silence, I thought I'd be free. But freedom doesn't come in neat packages. It comes messy. It comes with memories that don't fade, with scars that don't heal. I've spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering who I am without the fight, without the fire, without the women who once stood beside me, Elena, Nora, now ghosts in my past. I ask myself, what's left when the enemy is gone? When the war is over? I found the answer in the quiet moments. In the mornings when the sun filters through my window and the world is still new. I am no longer his shadow. I am light. I opened a small studio near the coast, a place where women could come to speak without fear, where stories like mine, like ours, could be told without judgment. Because silence is a prison, and healing starts with voice. The letters came first, from women I didn't know, from places I'd never been, stories that mirrored mine in heartbreak and hope. One woman wrote, "I thought I was alone, but reading your story made me believe I could survive too." That's when I knew. Revenge is cold, but survival is warm. It's messy and imperfect and beautiful. I still carry pain. I always will. But pain doesn't define me. It teaches me. Sometimes I walk to the cliffs where it all ended, where we faced him one last time, where the ocean swallowed his secrets. I feel the wind on my face and remember the promise I made to myself, to the girls who couldn't speak, to the women still fighting. We are not victims. We are survivors. We are warriors. The world thinks revenge is about anger, but it's not. It's about justice, closure, and reclaiming what was stolen. If you're listening, if you're hurting, know this. You're not imaginary. You're not broken. Your voice matters. And sometimes the fiercest love you can give yourself is the love that burns away the darkness. I'm Marin Kinsley. I buried a god, and I rose from the ashes.